Probably the same with the Apostle Paul. Why do I think that? Well, let's have a look at 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy. Timothy 4 and in verse 16 is where I'm going to start reading. And again, this is the Apostle Paul speaking. He says, "At my first answer, no man stood with me, but all men forsook me. I prayed God that it not be laid to their charge. Notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, and that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion." The lion, of course, not a literal lion, talking about Satan. That he's saying, all forsook me. All those that were with me, that were supposed to be with me, they all went off. They gave him up. They left him on his own. But he's saying this really important verse 17, "Notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me." So, I wasn't on my own. They all went, and I thought I was on my own, but I realised I wasn't on my own because the Lord stood with me. And sometimes as a Christian, you may feel that you stand on your own. Maybe times in your life where you have to make a stand for God, and you might feel like you're standing on your own, but you're not, because the Lord is standing with you. And the Apostle Paul knew what it was like for people to go and to leave him. And there's earlier on I think it's in Acts, where there's one of the other disciples goes with him, and then he refuses to go into a certain area and so on, and I think it's someone like Silas says, "Oh, shall we take him again?" And Paul says, No, he's not coming, because he wouldn't go with us the first time. And so there's obviously, and there's Barnabas, isn't there, as well? There's these conflicts that the Apostle Paul has with other disciples, and they go off their way and he goes his way. And yet we read in the Bible that they are reconciled later on. And so that's why I think Paul, probably quite a difficult person to deal with, quite a challenging person to deal with. And yet there's this other side of him, this really nurturing, fatherly side that he shows with Timothy. And to the extent that he's saying, look, there's none like Timothy. There's no one like him who is doing it, is showing this kindness out of a pure love for the people, just simply because he loves them and because he wants to help them. It's not any sense of duty, but it's out of a love for the people. And in the service of the gospel, he's saying, Timothy is like a son to me. And I just wanted to, there's a Charles Wesley hymn in here that it reminded me of as I was reading that. I just wanted to read a verse to you. I don't think we've ever sung it really here. Partly because it's very hard to play, or it's for me hard to play. And it's number 553. I'm only going to read one verse of it, but it's worth reading all of it actually, because if you get time, it's just a very good hymn. And the hymn is called "Give Me the Faith Which Can Remove and Sink the Mountain to a Plain." And it's all about it's a hymn that's all about witnessing for Christ, going out, preaching the gospel, reaching the lost. That's the whole kind of basis of the hymn. And verse 3 says this: "I would the precious time redeem, and longer live for this alone, to spend and to be spent for them who have not yet my Saviour known. Fully on these my mission prove, and only breathe to breathe thy love." And it's a wonderful hymn, and it goes on, verse 5, enlarge, inflame, and fill my heart. It's just a prayer to God, really, saying, I want to live even longer just for this alone, that I can reach more people. And it's taken from many of Paul's epistles, actually, to spend and to be spent. To spend all my life, to completely give myself up, all my energy, so that for when I go to bed at night, I'm absolutely exhausted just through giving myself to others for the sake of Christ, for their sake as well. Spending that time, that love with them, so that they can know Christ, so that they can know Him, trust Him, follow Him. And that's really what pastors and ministers, or whatever you want to call it, are called to do, is give their lives for people to. That's the word minister means servant. You're not there lording it over people, telling them what to do, or being a really good organizer, telling everybody exactly what they should be doing. You're there as a servant to actually, when you become a minister, you're supposed to step down, and you're there to serve the people and say, look, how can I help? Is everything okay? What more can I do to help you to know Christ? What more can I help you do on your walk, to help you walk and to help you overcome, and so on? And that's really what Paul is saying here to the Philippians. Is saying, I'm going to send this guy Timothy to you because there is nobody better. Because I love you so much. You've got to have the best, and he is the best. He's the most humble, the most caring that I can send to you, and I send him to you to look after you, really. And so, just a little bit more about Timothy. If you read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, which are Paul's letters to Timothy, if you were going to Bible college or something like that, they would probably tell you that they're called the pastoral epistles, which is a bit of a misnomer, really, because Timothy is not a pastor in the sense that most of us would understand it. He doesn't have his own church, and he isn't like there every Sunday, kind of preaching and caring for them. Timothy is really an itinerant evangelist. He goes from place to place. He's also a sort of assistant apostle. So, like, he's sent to various churches, and when he gets there, he'll just examine the people there, talk to them, and just see what is the state of the church and so on. And so you'll see that from his letters. But he is really an evangelist. If you turn to 2 Timothy chapter 4. By the way, if anyone's got anything they want to say, just butt in and say it. 2 Timothy 4 verse 5, and again it's Paul, of course, speaking to Timothy. He says, but watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. Dominic, what does yours say for verse 5? Could you read it from the New King James?
Yeah, but you be watchful in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry.
Yeah, fulfill your ministry. So it's saying that is your ministry, an evangelist. So that's what Timothy was. And that's what he did. Of course, because he did fulfill his ministry, and he also worked examining the churches and so on. And as I was saying, these are so rare and so valuable. In fact, I've got a quote from Matthew Henry. Matthew Henry's commentary is quite a well-known commentary. He says, account such men valuable who are zealous and faithful, and let them be highly loved and esteemed. So important, because it's so rare to find people like this. And of course, the devil doesn't want you to find people like this. The devil does not want Christians, particularly young Christians, to find somebody who will really care for their souls, you know. And so he will not want you going to the little evangelical church